Hey y'all, I'm Avalon.
And I'm Dominique.
And welcome back to another installment of our Dark Tales of Halloween series here on Dark Matter Podcast. So today we're going to be switching up the vibe a little bit. We'll be talking about something kind of spooky and paranormal, but like not quite, and we'll get into why. So we're going to be talking about the haunted, supposedly, Winchester Mansion today. And if you've never heard of it, here's some basic info just to get you up to date before we get into the whole case. So the house was originally bought by a woman named Sarah Winchester in 1884. And when she bought it, it was a small, unfurnished farmhouse. It was very small. And one of the reasons the house is infamous is because from the time she purchased it all the way until when she died, Sarah never stopped building and like remodeling the house. So it got to be huge, as you could imagine, because that was for almost 40 years that she lived there. Nowadays, the Winchester Mystery House, which is its official name now, is considered an architectural wonder, and it's a historic landmark location in San Jose, California, which is in NorCal. If you don't know, that's a bit of a road trip from us, but still in California.
Yeah.
And they provide self-guided tours as well as like special tours for the Halloween season. So it's definitely marketed as like a haunted mansion kind of thing, or like at least like a mystery mansion.
Right. And then one thing we did want to mention too is that I believe they just reopened recently to do Halloween tours, and it's like self-guided like you mentioned. So you're able to socially distance because again, the house is quite large, so there's probably enough space to be able to do that safely.
Yeah, you could easily social distance in there. Even a big amount of people could, because we're going to get into it. It's massive.
Right.
It's very large. So here's some details. So first of all, it's 24,000 square feet. It has 10,000 windows. And that's interesting because some of them aren't actually on walls. We'll get into it. Like some of them are on the floor and stuff. But yeah, there's 10,000 windows. There's 2,000 doors. 160 rooms. That's one that I really get caught up on because it's like a 10-room house is huge.
Right. I mean, what do you even do with 160
rooms? She definitely forgot about rooms. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Can't do anything without many. There's 47 stairways and fireplaces. There's 17 chimneys. That's excessive. That's really excessive for California.
Yeah.
13 bathrooms, 6 kitchens. And there used to be 7 stories in the house. Now there's only 4 stories because there's a huge earthquake in 1906. And so I guess like a bunch of the house was destroyed, and they tried to get back what they could, but it went down to 4 stories. But at its peak, like its glory days, it was 7 stories, which is insane.
I mean, if you go to visit it, you can see just how large it is today. So I can't even imagine, how much bigger it must be with 7 stories.
Yeah, that's a good point, because if there's 160 rooms now, imagine if there was 7 rooms, there would be even more. Like, I can't even imagine how many there would be.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's 4 stories now. And there's a lot of just oddities throughout the house. So there's several staircases that lead nowhere. So like a staircase that just leads to a wall or just leads to nothing. There's doors that open up into walls instead of like another room. Like you just open it and there's a wall there. There's even windows on the floor in some of the rooms. So a bunch of really weird things. And the number 13 and stained glass can be seen throughout the home. And these were 2 things that were just interests of Mrs. Winchester. I don't know. It was kind of unclear when I was doing the research if it was like literally the number 13 or things in like a set of 13. You know what I mean? I'm not really
like
sure what they
groups
meant.
of 13 items together.
Like maybe like 13 stairs or something like that. I'm not really sure what they meant, but somehow the 13 is incorporated, and stained glass as well. Like I said, she just really liked those things. And interestingly, there's a room that this is pretty creepy. Apparently Sarah performs seances in. And it kind of makes sense. We'll get into her life later, because I know with seances, you're generally talking with the dead or like the other side, I guess.
Yeah, like you're trying to make contact with people on the other side.
Exactly. So it kind of makes sense for Sarah. But yeah, she had a whole room just to perform seances in. And this room was weird. So there's bars on the window. I think it was just one window in the room, and there was bars on it. And then there's 2 doors in the room that you can exit from, but you can't enter from. So there's a total of 3 doors. There's one like normal door you can walk in and out of. But then the other 2 doors, so one of them, if you open the door and walk out, you'll fall into the kitchen sink from the level below. So the door just opens to nothing. So it's technically an exit, but you wouldn't want to take that door because you would fall. And the other exit opens up into the closet of an adjacent room. So you can't get in through that door. So there's only one door that you can come in and out of, but then there's those 2 extra doors that, so it's like there's 3 ways out, but 1 way in.
Right. This reminds me of like those old castles they have in Europe with trap doors or secret hallways. This is what it reminds me of.
It's like a secret agent thing where it's like they're on the mantle of like a fireplace and they turn something and then you like
the bookcase opens.
Yes, exactly. Like that's like the vibes I get from it. So it's very there's just a lot of oddities like that throughout the house. And if it was to be sold, obviously it's like a historic place now, so it's not like someone's gonna buy it. But if it was to be sold, it would be worth $71 million today. And just for fun, I looked up the price of other houses, just like celebrities' houses that would be, you would think they were worth a lot of money.
Right.
And I think the Kardashians, like Kim Kardashian and what's his name? Kanye West. Why did I forget his name? Kim and Kanye's house was worth, I think it was 60 million, and that was in like Calabasas or Bel Air or something, which is, I feel like most people think of that as, you know, like obviously very, very expensive. They're very wealthy people.
Right, and in a very nice area.
A very nice area, yeah, and this is even more than that. So yeah, 71 million if you were looking to buy in San Jose.
Yeah. So now we're going to get more into the background of Sarah and what her life was kind of like that led to the construction of this crazy house. Sarah Lockwood Parody was born in 1839 in New Haven, Connecticut. She actually grew up in a progressive household, and her father was associated with abolitionists as well as free thinkers of the day. And she actually went on to become an incredible student. She learned 4 different languages, as well as demonstrated proficiency in musical composition and math and science. But despite her big brain, she was actually pretty short in stature. She was only 4'10" tall and weighed 95 pounds. So she's even smaller than me. I'm only 5'1", but
yeah,
she was even shorter.
Was tiny. Oh, 4'10".
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought it was like 4'11". That's really tiny. I didn't think about that before. That's really, really tiny.
Yeah, and she was also so beautiful that she even earned the nickname the Belle of New Haven. And her future husband, William Wirt Winchester, was born 2 years earlier in Baltimore, Maryland. William was the only son of Oliver Winchester, who had founded the Winchester Repeating Arms Company. So Sarah and William got married in September 30th of 1862, and in 1866, they had their only child named Anne Parody Winchester. Tragically, the baby died from a common sickness called marasmus at only 5.5 weeks old. And in a follow-up of even more tragic events, in 1880, Sarah's father-in-law, Oliver Winchester, died and left his entire succession to his only child, William. However, at the time, William was already seriously ill and ended up passing away only 3 months after his father's death.
Yeah, literally just like death after death in her family.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine how Sarah would be able to handle something like this. So this basically meant that Sarah inherited the fortune that was left to William before his death, which was roughly $20 million, plus a whopping 50% of the Winchester Repeating Arms stock. So this basically means that she would be making thousands of dollars a day just by literally sitting there and doing nothing.
No, yeah, literally every single day. And it's funny to think about because it was just the circumstances, the way everybody died. She ended up with so much money with, you know, she didn't go and like start a company or anything. Like she ended up with so much money, but at what cost? Like the cost was that she lost her whole family. So, or well, her like new family that she had created.
Right.
So it's so sad. I can't imagine how that would feel. It's like, okay, well, cool. Like I'm set up for life, but I don't have anyone to share it with. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But I mean, I guess she had her sisters and we'll see that later. But yeah, it's just, I can't imagine what she felt like.
Yeah. So then in 1885, Sarah moved out west to California and purchased the 2-story farmhouse in San Jose, and that is when she began the seemingly never-ending renovation process. And by 1900, the Winchester house had grown into a 7-story Victorian giant. So, like we mentioned before, the construction kept going until 1992, until Sarah passed away, and 36 years of renovation finally came to an end. Her house was then sold and became a tourist destination as it remains today.
Right. Which makes sense, because what else do you do with a house like that? I'm glad they didn't take it down or anything. I think people were just like, what the hell? But it's actually a really popular destination now.
Yeah. One thing I will mention, though, is something that occurred to me is that, you know how we mentioned she had a seance room, is it could be because, I mean, well, she probably was like a bit eccentric, but it could have been because she was trying to contact her husband and her late daughter, you know, I mean, like we mentioned, she did have all this money and she had this huge house, but I bet she probably felt really lonely and she, you know, might have wanted to try to reach out to them and contact them in some way.
Yeah, that would definitely make sense. Because when I first read that she had a seance room, I was like, what the hell? But then I thought about it and it's like, you know what? I don't blame her at all. Like, I probably would do the same thing if that happened to me. So
Yeah, I mean, after all
like,
she went through.
Yeah, like, it's not really that weird when you consider her circumstances. And I guess she was also into spiritualism, which was pretty popular at the time. And so it's not as weird as I thought at first. Like, at first I was like, that's bizarre. She had a seance room, but that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so next we're going to get into some strange occurrences and just things that people have seen at the house that contribute to the idea that it's haunted or that it's, the mystery mansion. Like, just looking at it, it's already a mystery, but these are some of the weird things people have seen there. So according to the Winchester House website, like, they have an official website and everything, both employees and visitors claim to have seen different specters around the house, as well as just strange occurrences. So one of the more well-known ghosts is known simply as Clyde. He's described as a mustached worker wearing white overalls and a Victorian boater hat. And he can sometimes be seen pushing a wheelbarrow in the basement or tending to the fireplace in the ballroom. So I don't know what I think of this, but a lot of people apparently have reported seeing him doing the same thing over and over. And we'll kind of get into the different type of like hauntings later or ghosts or whatever it might be. But yeah, I just think it's interesting that several people have reported him and like seeing him in the same way. And I guess what I think of is, do they see him as you see us, like just a person, or is it like in the movies, like he's translucent? You know what I mean? I wonder if they just see him like a person walking around.
For all we know, it's just some random maintenance man. And people are like, oh my god, it's a ghost.
That would be so funny. Imagine it's just a guy who dresses like back in the day and he's actually a maintenance. Like, that's so funny.
Plot twist.
Yeah, we really don't know, but that's definitely a possibility. So there's also been reports from guests about feeling like a tug on their shirt or skirt during the tours. And a longtime maintenance worker also said that one morning he entered the water tower and heard footsteps, but when he went looking, the footsteps kept moving, but he found nobody, which is pretty weird because if he had just heard footsteps, I wouldn't think anything of it. But the fact that he went to look for them and he kept hearing them, but he never found anybody is definitely bizarre.
Yeah, and the thing is that the water tower was actually off limits, and that's why he went to go look for them. He went to tell them, like, hey, you can't be in here, and then he didn't even find anyone.
Yeah, that's definitely weird. It's weird, too, that if there's a ghost that shows himself, but then that one doesn't show himself, or if it is a ghost, it's just interesting. So, like I said, these are just weird things that have happened there. And there's also been several famous visitors to the house over the years. It's gotten pretty famous and they've had like some big names that have stopped by. So one of them was Harry Houdini, the famous like magician and like escape artist. And there's also a paranormal investigator named Zach Baggins. And there's the psychic Sylvia Brown and a medium James Van Prague. So obviously this is going to be a hotspot for people who, like communicate with the dead or are into things like that. So
yeah, like dabble in that field of mysticism.
Yeah, so they've had a lot of famous people in that field visit. And James actually performed a seance dinner while he was there. This made me think of what we just watched at Beetlejuice.
Oh, yeah.
The dinner. I'm sure it wasn't like that, but that's what I thought of. So he performed a seance dinner there and he claimed that he channeled Sarah and he said that she was happy that the house had so many visitors. And of course he could just say that and be making it up or even believe it and it's not true, but I don't know, from what we know of Sarah Winchester, it sounds like something she would say. She seemed like a sweet lady, so maybe he did talk to her. I don't know. I don't know what channeling. He talked to her, right? I don't know, but these are just things that people have reported.
Right. And the house was actually named one of Time Magazine's top 10 most haunted houses in America. So like we mentioned, it has gotten a bit of a reputation and there's definitely some intrigue mixed in there. So people who claim to have a paranormal experience usually described it as falling into 3 different categories. So first there's the residual hauntings, and this is described as being stuck in a moment in time on repeat, like over and over again. So this is the type of haunting or paranormal encounter that people who claim to have seen Clyde would fall into, because again, we mentioned that people see him often pushing the wheelbarrow or tending to the fire. So that's the type of thing that he may have done if he's a ghost, quote unquote.
Yeah, like just doing it over and over.
Like those are the tasks that he would supposedly have done as a maintenance worker when he was still alive.
Right.
The second one that I saw come up was called Intelligent Hauntings, and this is the one where the spirit is usually trying to make contact with the living. So again, this is when the people feel those tugs on their clothes while they're walking throughout the house. Like, could be spirits, trying to get
I wonder what
there.
their goal is, you know what I mean? Like, what they want. Maybe they're like, get the hell out of here. I would understand that. They're like, dude, we have this big-ass house to ourselves, like, get out of here.
Yeah, like, what are you doing in here? Who knows? I mean, could be anything. And then the last one that was mentioned is shadow hauntings. So this is actually the most common reported occurrence at the house, and many visitors actually claim to see shadowy figures roaming around corners, as well as down hallways and in windows. And I feel like it makes sense that this is the most common because this is the type of thing where you kind of see something at the corner of your eye and you're like, oh wait, did I actually see that? And it's definitely possible to see that if you're in a haunted house because you're going in there expecting to see something.
Like hoping almost
to see something. So it's definitely a lot easier for your mind to convince you like, oh, you actually did see something when, it could have been nothing at all or it could have been something flapping in the wind.
It could be so many things. And I know like it could also be that this house is built in a way that houses are not usually built. So there's like, if there's windows on the floor, if there's weird things like that, there's probably going to be shadows that you wouldn't usually see in a house. So just the way the house is set up, you're going to see weird like shadows and stuff, I would think. And it makes sense that it's the most common one, like you said, because it's kind of one of those things that you can be like, I don't know, I was just seeing things, but you could also look more into it like, no, that was weird. There was definitely something there. So who knows?
Yeah, definitely. So now let's get into the reason of why people actually think this house might be haunted. Because like we mentioned, no one's actually died in there in a tragic way. I mean, like there were workers obviously who lived at the house and like helped build the house. But as far as we know, there was nothing, big tragic
nothing bad
deaths.
happened. I think that's the thing that makes this unique is that like it's weird. It's a weird house, but like nothing bad happened there. It's not like somebody was murdered. That's usually what the haunted houses are. It's like someone was murdered, something horrible happened. Nothing bad happened in the house, but it's still thought of as haunted. So that's what we're going to talk about now.
Yeah, and one of the reasons for this is how she got her wealth in the first place, which is from the Winchester Repeating Arms Company. So like we mentioned, her father-in-law Oliver Winchester actually started out as a clothing manufacturer, but eventually he got into the arms business and actually co-founded the New Haven Arms Company. Eventually, due to money disputes, Winchester separated from his partner and actually went on to start his own company, which is the infamous Winchester Repeating Arms Company. So the reason this company is so important to today's story is the amount of death and pain that its products inflicted. Obviously, they were producing guns, which are weapons, and this is why people say Sarah was cursed. I mean, the huge amount of money that she inherited was, not earned innocently.
Yeah, like even though it wasn't her fault, like it was her money, you know what I mean? Right. And like if you think about it, Oliver, who actually founded it, and then his next in kin, or his kin, I guess, like his only son, they were both dead. So I guess people thought like, well, maybe the ghost just went to her because she was like next in line. So, and she benefited the most from the money. So it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's why people maybe say that the wealth that she has is cursed because it was earned through like this manner. Yeah, bloodshed pretty much. So we've explained why the company has such a bad rap, but we're going to get more into the details. So in 1873, Winchester introduced a new gun, which was appropriately named Model 1873. And according to the Idaho State Journal, this model actually went on to be known as a gun that won the West, and it kind of serves as a tangible representation of manifest destiny, and it inspired people to actually move out west and, quote, conquer the land and make a life for themselves.
I don't remember if it was the Model 17 or 1873 or if it was a different one, but I know that for sure Winchester guns were used during the Civil War. Yeah. Either on one side or both. It might have been both sides. So that makes sense that people were like, she's haunted because the Civil War was a very bloody war, and it was all Americans, if you think about it, you know what I mean? So it would make sense that people just thought of it as she was almost like responsible, even though she had nothing to do with it.
Or there was just like the connection that kind of made people speculate.
Right, so next we're going to get into some of the theories, like explaining the house and explaining Sarah's behaviors, I guess. So people said that she built the house and kept adding to it for so long to appease the spirits haunting her, especially the ones that had been victims to the Winchester rifle. They thought she was doing it to appease them in some way, like they wanted her to. There's also a theory that the house was built, like I said, there's weird staircases to nowhere and doors that you open to a wall. So people said that she built it as a labyrinth to confuse and like trap the ghosts and spirits that might come to her house. And some people say, in addition to that, that she was told by a psychic that you need to build this house and it'll trap them or like it'll get them confused, so it'll protect you essentially.
So this basically was to kind of get them to leave her alone.
Yeah, to like protect her from the ghost somehow. And then another theory said that, I think this was probably the theory, was she was told this by a psychic also. But another theory is that she was building because for some reason she thought that it would make her immortal. Like she got it in her mind that as long as she was building, she would be alive. And so people would say that she was building 24/7 every day of the year because she thought that as long as she did that, she would be alive.
So like picture of Dorian Grayish, where it's like as long as you have the picture, it like keeps you young. So as long as she kept building the house, it would build her. Well, that was obviously not true because she did end up passing away, as everyone does.
Exactly. Yeah, she passed away, and like people said, for that theory to be true, it would have to be that she was building like 24/7, and that wasn't true because there was months at a time that she would take off because it was too hot, or maybe because she wasn't feeling inspired or whatever it might be. But she didn't build 24/7. That's objectively not true. As far as the records go, pretty much none of these theories are true. There's not really a lot of evidence to back up any of them. I forgot to mention, a lot of people, I think this isn't even like a theory, it was just kind of a general belief about her, was that she lost her mind. A lot of people would say that they're like, well, she went through a lot of grief, like she lost her daughter, she lost her husband. Right. It kind of makes sense. They're like, she went crazy and started building a huge house, which is fair because that's kind of what it looks like.
That's the most reasonable explanation.
Yeah,
for sure.
Like if you see the house and see how it's built, I would probably think this is a crazy person too.
Like she's off her rocker.
Yeah, because it's weird, but there's more explanations for it. So what seems more likely or the most accurate depiction of Sarah, based on like actual letters and actual accounts from that time, is that so she moved out west because she wanted to be with her two sisters and brother-in-law who had already moved there because they were all from the East Coast, but some of her family already moved out there. And she started building the house because she honestly had a passion for architecture. And on top of that, she had a shitload of money.
So it's like, well, why not do
what's
this?
What's stopping her? Yeah. Exactly. Because she was like, I think especially when you go through that kind of loss of losing your daughter that you just gave birth to, losing your husband, she's kind of like, whatever. What do I have to lose? You know what I mean? Like, I want to build a house. I'm going to build a house. Like, I'm going to build the best house. You know what I mean? Nothing was stopping her. So it made sense. And if you think about it, if we adjusted it for inflation, she was making $25,000 a day. Like, this is a crazy, and that's just the amount she was making every day. She had the 20 million like in the bank, and then 25,000 every single day. So I don't know. I feel like we would all probably do some weird stuff if we got that much money. You know what I mean? Like, she was just pursuing her interest and doing what was fun to her.
Yeah, I mean, this was definitely her pet project. And again, it could be just a substitute of the things that she lost. It could be she's just pouring all her love and her energy into this house because it could be a reminder of her family.
Exactly. It was definitely her passion project. Like, she loved it for her family, I would say. And on top of that, another explanation for why, more specifically, like why it was a labyrinth, because that doesn't really explain why did she build staircases to nowhere, right? Like that doesn't explain it. So one explanation for that is that, so obviously if you're building a house or you're remodeling it, you need some kind of professional like an architect to plan it for you. And she didn't do that. She did it all on her own because I guess she, from what I could find, she tried to work with a few different architects, but it seemed that like the impression I got was that they didn't really see her vision because like she obviously was a visionary. She had an idea of what she wanted this house to look like. And I think that they just weren't really going with it. And so she was like, you know what? I'm just going to do this on my own. But she didn't go to architecture school. She was a very smart woman, but that's something you have to go to school for. You can't just wing it.
Yeah, so, I mean, I feel like she's a very independent woman. She knew what she wanted and she wasn't afraid to go for it. But that definitely explains why it's not that it's not well built, but
there's weird things.
Yeah, this isn't something a normal architect would usually build for sure.
Exactly. Like that would make sense that she would build a staircase to somewhere and then realize, oh, that's not going to work. And the workers are just doing whatever she said.
Yeah, they're
getting paid.
Yeah,
they're not thinking anything of it. So it actually explains a lot of things that she wasn't a professional and she was kind of just trying to figure it out on her own.
Yeah, and I mean, I even read somewhere too that there wasn't even a floor plan drawn up for the house, which again makes sense.
I don't think there was,
Yeah, she's probably just swinging it. Like, oh, I feel like a nice bathroom would go well here.
Yeah, I literally think she just went day by day. Like, she would just wake up and I need this. She's the quintessential, like, reclusive art person.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
definitely.
Like, I want
agree.
this. Like, not to bring up Beetlejuice again, but the mom from Beetlejuice, that is like, it reminds me of her so much. I think Sarah's much nicer. I don't think she was, her personality was like that. But the idea of just, I need something here. Like, I need a statue here, or we're adding a porch or whatever it might be. And like, she would just want these random things in the house. And that's the vibe I got from Sarah. She just kind of went with whatever idea she got. But of course, people weren't going to understand that because people didn't know her. They didn't go through what she went through. And people were just assholes back then, the way they are now. So they started a lot of rumors about her because she was a reclusive widow. Like, she was a very eccentric figure.
Yeah,
But
not to mention very wealthy and beautiful, so I feel like that definitely added to the intrigue. Like, all the factors combined definitely just made people curious about her.
yeah, and another thing too is that she really kept to herself. So people obviously just didn't have a great view of her at this time. They just made up a lot of rumors about her. She was a widow. She was weird to them, and like, she had this huge house. And eventually she became a scapegoat and even a villain to many because America went through a horrible depression, an economic depression. And of course, Sarah was unaffected by this. She had millions of dollars coming in. And so people hated her for this, which is, I understand they were going through depression, but like, it really isn't her fault that she made all that money.
Right. I think, part of it was jealousy, obviously. And she was a beautiful, smart young woman with all of this money. So, I think part of it was definitely the jealousy and the fact that they didn't understand her because I feel like she was very progressive for her time, especially as a woman. So I think that definitely tied into all of the intrigue surrounding both her and the house.
Yeah, and I think it's really not fair though that people were so mad at her. I mean, like, I get it, but it's also not really fair because part of the reason she kept building, like, partially she just liked architecture, she liked building, but she also did it to keep the locals employed. If you think about it, that was a lot of money she was spending on the house, and so somebody has to do it. It wasn't her. So she was employing roughly, like, I read somewhere that it was at least like 13 people, or like around 13 people at a time. So that's a lot of people working for her. That's like a company of its own, And apparently she paid her workers far above what was expected at that time. Like, she paid them really well. And she even bought houses for some of their families. So they were totally taken care of if they worked for her. This was, like we talk a lot about nowadays about supporting local businesses. This is the epitome of supporting local businesses. Her whole life's work really was supporting the community around her in this way. And so she supported her locals by doing this. She kept them well paid and everything. And I don't know, I think it's not really fair that people had this view of her, because at the end of the day, I think it's what you said. They were just jealous. They just wanted a reason not to like her, because it's easy to be like, if there's a rich person who's just an asshole, it's perfect because you just can hate them and you have an excuse to hate them. But she was a rich person who wasn't an asshole, is the impression I got, and people wanted to make her out to be so that they could hate her, but there really was no excuse to hate her. I think that she was just a misunderstood person. I think she was really resilient and really powerful and independent and like you said, very progressive for her time, ahead of her time.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because she had so much money, but she really didn't have anything she didn't like need to show it off to anybody. Yeah. She kept to herself. She was very quiet. She kept her circle small, just her family really. And she just didn't need to show it off or flaunt it to anyone. I think she was a really cool person, and like, we've talked about this, that we would definitely be her friend if we met her. Like, she's somebody really cool.
And I think she kind of reminds me of the character of Boo Radley, if you've ever read To Kill a Mockingbird. So he basically lives in this small town, and he's kind of similar to Sarah in the fact that he is very reclusive and solitary, and he pretty much stays in his house the whole time. And the town people kind of just build this sort of legend behind him where he's like this creepy, like, mean old guy, but in reality he's just off minding his own business, and like I said, I think the town kind of made assumptions about her because she didn't interact with them so much, and she was so reclusive, and that's the thing. I feel like they just made assumptions, which is kind of what led to the whole mystery behind this house as well.
Yeah, I think that in the absence of knowing someone, it's usually bad things that are assumed, because like if they don't talk much, or if they just kind of keep to their own, then people automatically assume, at very least, that they're just quiet and they're shy and like, or rude because they don't talk to people.
Yeah.
But obviously it got way worse than that. People were saying crazy things about her, and that she had lost her mind, and that she was like talking to these psychics and everything. And even if she was talking to psychics, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But people made up so many rumors about her, and I feel like that just adds to her character even more, because I feel like she really was unbothered. I don't think she gave a shit that people were talking about her, because it clearly didn't stop the construction. Like, she didn't change for anybody, and so, I don't know, I respect her a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and then at the end of the day, who knows? Maybe there was some, mysterious stuff going on.
Yeah.
It could be like a combination of different things. But I definitely think what society and the people around her thought of her definitely affected how we see her and the house today.
Exactly, because going into this, I was like 100% it was haunted because of the Winchester arms, and like she was crazy. That's the only thing I knew about this going in, about her at least, was that she was crazy.
Yeah.
And then I find out she wasn't crazy. She just had like a really hard life, and she made the best of it, and she just did her own thing. So it's crazy how that's so true. People's ideas of her, their impressions of her, formed the tale. You know what I mean? And
definitely.
so what we know about her is based on these people who didn't even know her.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to look at the case and realize it's not as spooky as it seems, but there is probably some weird stuff that there are something that goes on there. But at least her story, I think, is not spooky.
Yeah. But anyway, we hope you enjoyed listening, and we'll be back next Monday with our next spooky episode, so make sure to stay tuned for that. And also make sure to follow us on our Instagram at darkmatterpod and our Twitter at darkmatter_pod. And as always, the full list of sources and any photos are going to be on our website, darkmatterpod.com.
Right, and if you're listening on Spotify, be sure to follow us, or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, it would be a huge help if you left us a review. Also, be sure to subscribe and like our videos on YouTube if you enjoyed watching. And if you like our podcast, we'd really appreciate it if you spread the word to your friends and family, because that really helps us grow. All right, thanks for listening, guys, and we'll have another episode in this series next week.
Bye.